It was just a few weeks after my husband Walter's funeral when the phone call started. The quiet of the house, the one Walter and I had shared for over 30 years, suddenly became a cacophony of requests, demands, and expectations. It felt like the house itself was haunted by the ghosts of all the things left unsaid. The once familiar objects, like the old chair Walter always sat in while reading the newspaper, now seemed like relics of a life that had vanished too soon. I was sitting in the kitchen one morning, my hands holding onto a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The floral arrangement from the funeral had already started to wilt, their petals curling at the edges like the memories I had left of him. It was supposed to be a time for mourning, for me to grieve, but instead I felt like I was being suffocated by the demands of my own children. First came my son, Michael, a good man in many ways, but with an edge of impatience that I had always known too well. "Mom, we need to talk about the house." His voice came through, abrupt, just as he had been when he was a teenager asking for money. I wasn't ready for this. "Not now. Not so soon. What about it?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Well, Mom, let's be honest. It's too big for you. You can't manage it on your own," he said, as if the house, the home where I had raised my children, was just an asset to be disposed of. The words felt like a punch to the stomach. I had always been there for Michael, offering support, love, and guidance. Yet here he was, talking to me as if I were a problem to be solved. He and his wife, Lisa, had been discussing my situation, they said. They'd even found someone who might be interested in buying the house. It felt like I was being sold off as quickly as possible, like I no longer mattered, and all that mattered was getting rid of the past. Of Walter. I couldn't hide my frustration anymore. "Do you think I'm incapable of handling this? Do you think I can't make my own decisions?" I asked, my voice rising. His response was calm but dismissive. "We're just trying to help, Mom. It's for your own good. Think of it as a win-win. We get some help with the mortgage, and you get relief from the upkeep." Relief, the word, echoed in my head, but all I could hear was the absence of Walter's voice. It was clear to me now, the truth they had hidden under layers of concern. It wasn't about my well-being. It was about what they could gain from my grief. That was when I knew something had changed. It wasn't just Walter's absence, it was the realization that my children had lost sight of who I was, of what I had always been to them. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I had become an inconvenience. Asterisk, a week later, it was my daughter Clara's turn. She hadn't called during the funeral. She hadn't called to check on me, and when I reached out, she was distant. But now she was suddenly interested in my situation. Suddenly, she had opinions. "Mom, I've been talking to Michael," she said over the phone. "He's right. You shouldn't be in that house alone. You need to move in with one of us. It's just too much for you." My fingers tightened around the phone as her words hit me, one after another. She hadn't seen me in days. She didn't know what I was going through. Didn't know that I was still carrying Walter's scent in the house. His books still scattered around the study, his slippers by the door. Yet here she was, telling me that my grief didn't matter, that I should just leave it behind. "They've already found a house for us," she continued. "We've been looking at something smaller, something more manageable. You could come stay with us until we figure everything out." "Until we figure everything out," I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. It sounded so simple, so practical. Just like my life was a puzzle they could solve in a few easy steps. "No, Clara," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not ready to give up everything, not like this. This house is all I have left of Walter. I can't just sell it, move on, as if nothing happened." Her silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. She didn't argue. She didn't say a word. And in that silence, I understood everything. I was a problem, an obstacle, something they needed to clear out of the way to make room for their own lives. But what about me? What about the life I had built, the life Walter and I had spent decades creating together? What did that mean to them? As I hung up the phone, I walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where Walter and I had spent countless hours tending to the garden. The roses had bloomed and died, and now they were overgrown. Just like the house, just like me, I wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't ready to be moved aside. Asterisk the next day, I found myself standing in Walter's study, the room still as it had been when he was alive. The papers he had worked on, the letters he had written, all neatly stacked on his desk. I had never been one to meddle with his things, but that day, something compelled me to go through the papers. It was in one of the folders that I found the documents that would change everything. Hidden beneath a pile of old tax returns and investment papers was a deed to a small villa in Spain. The villa had been a surprise from Walter, a place we had always dreamed of, a place for us to retire, where we could watch the sunsets and enjoy life without anyone asking us for anything. I read the papers carefully. It was fully paid off, just like our house. Walter had made sure of it. He had kept it a secret, telling me that one day, when the time was right, we would go there. But now, in the wake of his death, it felt like the perfect escape. The villa was a symbol of the life we had once planned, of the freedom I could still have. I put the papers down and stared at them for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. The decision that had seemed so simple before suddenly felt impossible. Could I really leave? Could I really leave everything behind, including the family that had never really seen me for who I was? Asterisk. Later that week, I made the call. The one I had been dreading. I reached out to the property management company that took care of the villa in Spain. The woman who answered the phone was warm, kind, and incredibly understanding. Her name was Pilar, and she had been taking care of the house for years. "Mrs. Lawson," she said, "Russell spoke of you often. He always said how much he wanted you to be happy in this house." Her words were like a balm to my bruised soul. It felt like a piece of Walter was still there, still looking out for me, still caring for me in a way that no one else did. I told her I was coming to Spain, that I was ready to see the villa. Pilar's voice brightened as she promised to take care of everything. She would meet me at the house when I arrived. I felt a sense of calm wash over me, the kind I hadn't felt since before Walter's death. The next morning, I booked my flight to Spain, and just like that, I made the decision that would change everything. Asterisk, it was a quiet departure. I didn't tell Michael or Clara about my plans. I couldn't bring myself to explain. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't see the value in what I was doing, in reclaiming my life. They saw only the financial aspect, the house, the money, the inheritance. They saw nothing of the woman who had spent 30 years supporting them, raising them, and loving them. I packed my bags carefully, took one last look at the house, and locked the door behind me. I was leaving behind the life I had once known, but I was also finding something new, something that had always been mine, waiting for me in the quiet of Spain. As the plane lifted off, I looked out the window and let out a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I was no longer just a mother or a widow. I was Michelle Lawson, a woman with her own future, her own choices. And as the plane soared above the clouds, I realized that for the first time in years, I was truly free. The flight to Spain was long and filled with a mix of anticipation and nerves. The feeling of being untethered from everything I had once known was both terrifying and exhilarating. As the plane touched down in Malaga, I felt as if the weight of the past year, of my husband's sudden death, and the endless demands of my children was finally lifting off my shoulders. I stepped off the plane, the warm Mediterranean air greeting me like an old friend. The scent of salt water and blooming flowers filled my lungs, a stark contrast to the sterile, cold atmosphere of the house I had left behind in the States. My heart, once heavy with grief, now beat with a rhythm that was different, freer. Pilar was waiting for me at the arrivals gate, a friendly face that instantly put me at ease. She was small, with silver hair neatly pulled into a bun, and a gentle smile that reminded me of women I had known in my youth. She greeted me like an old friend, not just a client, which felt strangely comforting. "Michelle, welcome. The house is ready for you," Pilar said, her voice warm and inviting. I followed her to the car, watching the sun setting over the hills, the landscape so foreign and yet so inviting. As we drove through the narrow streets, Pilar pointed out little details, places where I could buy fresh produce, cafes where I could enjoy a cup of coffee, and the beautiful beaches that stretched along the coastline. "This is a place for living, Michelle, not just existing. Russell would have wanted you to enjoy it," she said as we passed by a lush garden filled with bougainvillea. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Russell had always wanted this for us, to have a place where we could truly live, away from the demands, away from everything that had made our life feel like a series of obligations rather than moments of joy. When we arrived at the villa, I was taken aback by its beauty. The house was smaller than the one I had left behind, but it was perfect in every way. Whitewashed walls, blue shutters, and a garden that seemed to burst with color roses, lilac, and lemon trees that promised a future I had never thought I'd have. The interior was bright and welcoming, with terracotta floors, a fireplace that seemed to invite long, leisurely evenings, and a terrace that overlooked the Mediterranean. "This is where you'll find peace," Pilar said, showing me around. "The house, everything is ready. You just need to make it your own." Over the next few days, I settled into the villa. The quiet here was different from the silence I had left behind in the States. In Spain, the silence was filled with possibility. I spent the mornings walking through the village, talking to shopkeepers who were eager to learn my name and preferences. I spent afternoons reading by the terrace, sipping wine and losing myself in the pages of a novel I hadn't picked up in years. I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried beneath the weight of caregiving and the constant pressures of family life. I started writing again, not the novel I had once dreamed of, but a memoir of sorts about marriage, motherhood, and the way a woman's identity can become tangled in the roles she plays for others. In the evenings, I would sit on the terrace, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the waves crashing against the rocks below. The world felt so much smaller now, but also bigger in ways I had never considered before. 2 weeks passed before I received a call from Kathleen, my granddaughter. It had been months since we had spoken, and the weight of our last conversation had been heavy on both our hearts. When I answered the phone, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Grandma," Kathleen's voice came through, tentative but strong. I don't know how to say this. I've been thinking about everything, about you, about what's been happening." I sat down on the couch, my heart racing. I didn't know what she was going to say, but something about her voice told me it was different this time. "I'm sorry," she continued, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry for everything, for not being there for you, for not understanding. I thought I knew what was best for you, but I was wrong." I listened, feeling something shift in me. Kathleen wasn't a child anymore. She was an adult grappling with the complexities of family and the expectations that had been placed on her for years. "I didn't know about the money." "About you sending me money for school?" she said, almost whispering. "I had no idea." The truth hit her like a ton of bricks, and I could feel her pain through the phone. For so long, I had been the one to give, to support, to be the one everyone could count on. But now, Kathleen was seeing things with clearer eyes. She was starting to understand the sacrifices I had made, and she was starting to realize how much of my life had been spent in the service of others. "I'm in Spain now," I said softly, the words feeling like a declaration of freedom. "And it's the best decision I've ever made. I'm finally doing something for me." There was silence on the other end, and I could hear Kathleen processing everything I had just said. Then she spoke again, her voice stronger. "Grandma, I want to visit you. I want to see the house. I want to see you. I'm coming to Spain. I don't care what anyone says." Asterisk Kathleen arrived 3 weeks later, her face a mixture of excitement and nervousness. When I saw her standing at the airport terminal, I didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the polished, Instagram-ready college student. Instead, she wore faded jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked different, free, unburdened, and more like the young woman I had always hoped she would become. She ran towards me, dropping her backpack and embracing me like she had never let go. "Grandma," she whispered, tears in her eyes, "I've missed you." And I realized in that moment I had missed her too. Not the version of her that had been a part of the family dynamic, but the real version of her, the one who saw me for who I truly was, not just as a grandmother who provided and gave. We spent the next few days exploring the villa, walking through the village and talking. I shared the details of my life in Spain, the books I was writing, the people I had met, and the way the village had welcomed me. Kathleen listened, truly listened, in a way that no one else had. One afternoon, while sitting on the terrace overlooking the sea, she turned to me and said, "I think I want to live here. Maybe I can transfer to a university here, or take a year off. I want to figure out who I am, not who they want me to be." The weight of her words hit me harder than anything I had expected. Kathleen wasn't just finding herself in Spain. She was finding her voice. She was choosing her own path, just as I had chosen mine. Asterisk, a month passed, and Kathleen decided to take a leave of absence from her university in the States. She moved into a small apartment in Marbella, close to the villa. We spent weekends traveling together, visiting local museums, tasting the local cuisine, and soaking up the sun. Kathleen began to blossom in a way that she never had before, and I saw a side of her I had always known was there, hidden under the pressure of family expectations. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that my life had changed in ways I had never imagined. I have found peace, independence, and most importantly, the freedom to be who I had always wanted to be. I no longer felt like a caretaker, a problem to be solved, or a financial resource to be tapped. I had become Michelle. Lawson again, and this time I was living life on my own terms.